Tonight we're lucky to have a presentation and question and answer and sharing session with Marie Caduto. And Marie is the watershed planner for Vermont DEC. She covers the region that is Basin 10, which is just north, that's in southern Windsor County, all the way down through the Deerfield. So down to the Mass border. And tonight we're going to be focusing on Basin 11, which covers the West, the Williams, and the Saxtons River, and then and their watersheds, plus some of the direct tributaries in between those that feed directly into the Connecticut River. And this is part of an upcoming Tactical Basin Plan update that is happening for this region. And so we're going to get a presentation from Marie about current status of Basin 11, and then have a chance after her presentation to ask questions, have comments, and those questions and comments will feed back into the Basin 11 update, which will be coming. And the input that we have and that our communities have is really important in creating the update for the basin planning process. So, Marie, I'm going to let you answer whether you want to take questions during your presentation or whether you want all questions to wait. So I'm going to let you address that. Without further ado, here's Marie Caduto.
Thanks, Margot, and thanks for hosting this tonight. I really appreciate just the opportunity to get this information to you and get all of your feedback on as I start to really write the plan. This is all the preliminary work to lead up to me gathering the content to put into the plan. So thank you for doing that. And I'm going to attempt to let's hit the share screen thing and make sure that comes up first.
You should be able to share, so why don't you try it?
Just let me know. So which screen do you see? Do you see the test slide or do you see the presentation slide?
Presentation slide.
Oh, good. So that's good. I'm going to attempt to do this without glasses on because I realize they glare and flash, so I might have to put them on to actually read anything.
So Marie, and before you begin though, how do you want people to hold their questions, or do you want them to ask while you're presenting?
If you have a question on a particular slide, feel free to ask. I'd like this to be as back and forth as possible. If you have something that you want to really delve into, that would be an more extensive discussion. Let's hold those till the end. That way we can kind of get into specifics. But if it's on a particular slide, feel free to go ahead and ask. So what I wanted to do was just do really quickly for those who aren't necessarily familiar with the basin planning process. I've just got a couple of slides on that to let you know what that is, and then I'll jump right into kind of the specifics of Basin 11 that we know so far. So as Margot said, this is the Tactical Basin Plan for these 3 rivers for the basin, which includes the Connecticut River. Since probably the last time I may have presented to the board, we are now the Water Investment Division rather than I am no longer in the Watershed Management Division. Same stuff, different title. All right, there we go. So just kind of a really quick overview of the basin planning process. We have 15 basins in Vermont. Some of them are one river, some of them, like this one, are combinations of rivers. There are 5 planners around the state, and we do this to every basin on a 5-year rotating basis. So the process is monitoring and assessment, and then planning and implementation. And we are, as you well know, in Basin 11, which is down here. I cover these three basins, and I'm assuming you can see my cursor. So I cover those 3 basins, and this is my 3rd time around for Basin 11, which is scary to think about. So this is the process. It starts with monitoring, and we take a year to monitor, and then we take some time to gather all that data together and data from other organizations and agencies, pull it all together, and somebody tries to figure out what it all means. And then I come in and start the basin planning process. And this is that initial, as I said, initial data gathering part. And then I'll write the plan and then put it out and come back to you to ask for your final input. And if I've captured what you hoped I would, or if not, or what else I need to add. And then we spend the next year, 5 years or so, implementing the strategies that we've come up with. So basically we synthesize the water quality data and then lay out the goals and the strategies, the actions that we want to implement over that 5-year period to make improvements and protect waters that need it. And the more key aspect that is much stronger now than it used to be is that the basin plans really do guide the implementation funding that is the Clean Water Fund. So it's what is in the basin plan is what is going to be funded over the next 5-year period. So we want to make sure that what you want done is reflected in the basin plan. As we develop the strategies, we do it under these 5, we call them land use sectors. So we're looking at agriculture in the basin and what practices, what needs to be done to ensure clean water and viability of the agricultural landscape. We're looking at developed land stormwaters, stormwater runoff from villages and all other land uses, as well as developed roads with the multi-sector general permit. There is the municipal roads general permit. The other one's the stormwater permit. So we're looking at all those road runoff issues as well. We cover wastewater and wastewater treatment plants and those facilities. But the bulk of what the basin plan really delves into are the natural resource restoration opportunities, needs opportunities, and the protection opportunities that we have. So if anyone has questions on the process, feel free to ask, and otherwise I'll move into the specifics. In that case, I will move into the specifics. So Basin 11, just a kind of an overview, quick overview. This is the entire basin. So it covers 700 square miles of southeastern Vermont, and Stratton Mountain, the peak of Stratton, is the highest elevation that we have, and it drops 3,700 feet to the lowest elevation, which is the Retreat Meadows in Brattleboro. It takes in all or some of 29 towns, and it also covers, as I said, about 26 miles of the main stem of the Connecticut River. So the largest of those is the West River, which is 46 miles long and 423 square miles. I'm just gonna give you a sidebar and say when, according to ADA, I am required to mostly read what's on the slides in case someone can't hear me. So I'm reading more than I normally would. So you can see it flows from Weston through Londonderry all the way down to Brattleboro. And again, it hits the Connecticut at the Retreat Meadows. The Williams is the next largest, most northern of the 3 major sheds, 25 miles long, 117 square miles from Andover to Chester and into Rockingham. And it's shorter, but it still drops 2,500 feet down to Herrick's Cove. And kind of the main tributaries, the Middle Branch, which runs towards Windham, and the South Branch, which runs towards Grafton. The Saxtons, well, it's the smallest, 26 miles long and covers 78 square miles. It's actually the steepest. It drops 2,600 feet in 26 miles. So it's a steep, small watershed. Glebe Mountain at the top of it, and then covering Windham, Grafton, Athens, Rockingham, and Westminster. And that one comes out just south of Bellows Falls in Westminster. And it's got the south branch of the Saxtons, which is Grafton to Townsend, and then Bull Creek, which is more Rockingham to Westminster to Athens, right? Well, Rockingham to Athens, I would say. And then this is the stretch of the Connecticut River that it's covered. It's about 26 miles long, from Herrick's Cove down to the Retreat Meadows. And it's influenced, that whole stretch is really influenced by the two hydro dams, the dam at Walpole and the dam down in Vernon, whether it's the backwater of the dam or the downstream end of the dam. And in that stretch that's covered, it's got 4 bridges over it, the Arch and the Vilas in Bellows Falls, the 123 bridge in Westminster, and the Route 9 bridge in Brattleboro. These are all the, well, not all of, there are a lot of small streams that discharge directly to the Connecticut River. These are the named of those small streams, and some aren't that small. So starting in Rockingham, Ellis Brook is kind of in the Upper Meadows area, if you know where that is. Cobb Brook is one that comes out by like Allen Brothers and the Exchange, the I-91 Westminster exit. Millbrook, Fulham, and Chase are all in Westminster, and Chase comes out actually on over here, same Chase that comes out in Putney. East Putney Brook and Sackett's Brook are the 2 largest watersheds of the Connecticut River directs. Mill, Canoe, Salmon are all there, and then Crosby Brook is at the kind of the roundabout area in Brattleboro, exit 3. And that one we're going to be focusing a lot on because that is listed as impaired for sediment. So this looks really confusing, but this is now an interactive map. It's not interactive on this, but I have created a story map, which is on the Basin 12 ANR website. And if you click on this map in that story map on any of these different colors, it will pop up and zoom in and tell you what's going on with water quality. So this is our biological monitoring data, and anything towards the yellow and green spectrum is good to excellent water quality, and anything on the reddish scale is not so good water quality. So you can see that majority of the watershed is yellow and green, which is good to excellent conditions. And what that means is that it supports the designated uses that water quality standards require to be supported. And those are swimming, boating, fishing, aquatic biota, aquatic habitat, aesthetics, and drinking water supply. And while I say drinking water supply, that does not mean you can drink the West River. It means it is suitable for using as a water supply with treatment. So it still needs to go through treatment. It's not so clean that you can just drink out of the river anywhere ever, actually. So that biological monitoring data is also accessible on our atlas, on the ANR Natural Resources Atlas. So if you go to the atlas, and this is the web, you can just Google Vermont Natural Resources Atlas and it will come up. And it has the same color scale spectrum from green to red, from good to not so good. And one of those layers under watershed management is water monitoring. And when you click that layer, this symbol will come up wherever we have a monitoring site. And what the symbol means is that in this particular case, we test the bugs, we test the fish, we test the chemistry, and we evaluate the habitat. So some of them have all four, some of them have one, some of them have varying numbers of what we happen to monitor at that particular site. So you can see on some of these that, you know, there's green. This one doesn't have a fish number because it's probably too small to host fish. So you can pull that data up, and when you're in the map, if you click on this symbol, again, the data behind it will show up. So if your stream in your backyard has a monitoring site somewhere along it, you can look at that and see exactly what's going on that brook. Some of the reasons for that good water quality is the amount of forest land cover that this basin has. So the light green on this map is forest cover, just general forest cover. The dark green is protected forest cover, so it's either federal, state, or municipally owned land. And all the gold is current use property. And current use, we consider current use a protection because it means that land is going to stay in forest cover. It can always be pulled out, but for the most part, that land is going to be forest cover for quite some time. And as I'm sure you know, forest cover is our most protective of water quality. It infiltrates, it filters, it stores. So what's coming into our streams and our rivers from forest land is the cleanest water we can look for. And out of the entire watershed, 89% of it is in forest cover. And that, I'm sure, is a big reason that we are in the yellow to green spectrum on the majority of the watershed, because that forest cover is giving us that good water quality. And what that leads to is this list of waters, what we call very high quality waters. So our monitoring reveals that these brooks, rivers, meet the water quality criteria that have been set for our water classification system, which is A1, B1, and B2. So A1 is our most protective, most stringent. B1 is fairly new, so we're doing a lot of looking at what fits B1 because we just got that category not long ago. And everything basically is B2. We have an A1 category, which is strictly for drinking water, so I'm not covering that in this particular map. So all the ones that are solid blue already meet A1 criteria, and the solid green meet B1 criteria. And you can see on here where it says candidate, those are the ones that already meet our criteria and could be put forward for reclassification. The ones that are dashed lines we still need more monitoring. We try to base it on more than one set of data. So we'll do it 1 year and then we'll go back the next year or a couple of years later to verify that is consistent and it's consistently good. We don't want to reclassify something to A1 because it just happened to have a good year. Because if we were to do that and then it doesn't meet those water quality criteria over time, then it becomes an impaired water. And as you know, that kicks in all kinds of things. So we want to make sure we are classifying the high quality waters that are going to be and remain high quality, and then others that we work on to bring them up to that level. Not everything is perfect in any watershed. This watershed has 49 mapped dams, and there are lots and lots of dams that are not on any map that we don't know about. We discover them all the time. And thanks everybody for reporting those when they are found. And we do now have, just as of July 1st, we have new dam safety rule legislation and rules that are starting to kick in and will be kicking in over the next year or two. And every dam has a hazard classification, and we have new ones for that. So the hazard classification has nothing to do with the condition of the dam, right? The dam could be half broken. It could be really unstable. This classification doesn't have anything to do with that. What a hazard classification means is that were the dam to breach or fail, the downstream damage is what the hazard class tells you. So if it's significant or high, that means life, property, infrastructure downstream are likely to be damaged or lost. If it's a low hazard dam, it's usually a lower there's 4 classifications, and I'm low and breached, that's right. So those, obviously, if those go, those aren't gonna cause widespread damage downstream. So we do have those, and we have these top ones in the chart that are the significant hazard and the high hazard. Obviously things the size of Townsend and Ball Mountain are gonna be significantly dangerous if they were ever to breach. So the new rules require that dam owners register their dams, and there are now annual fees to pay so that those dams can be regularly inspected and maintained. And so there's a lot of change coming in, and Corey just recently did a really good workshop on the dam safety, and he can tell you about that if anyone's interested. And I mentioned the road erosion issues, and as anyone from a municipality knows, the road erosion inventories are required to be done. And this map is reflective of the ones that have been completed, the towns that have completed theirs. And I know some towns have them completed and the data just hasn't gotten into our database yet. So I'm hoping that more of these towns that don't show up are already completed. And the graph shows you that within that particular drainage basin, how much has been assessed and how much of it fully meets, the green is fully meets the road requirements and the road standards. And the red is they don't meet, or they are basically in need of attention. And we do this to try to help focus the implementation work on the most in need, the reds, before you start working on the greens, which is why you see all the road work being done and the stone line ditches being put in these days. It's all to meet these requirements. And overall, you know, once we have gone through all the data and looked at these impacts, we end up with the listed waters, which we are required to report to EPA every other year. And those categories are the impaired waters and the stressed waters. So the stressed are waters that are not doing well against our water quality criteria. They haven't crossed the line into impaired, but they're on the border. So we like to work on our stressed waters so they don't go impaired, and then we don't have to go through the TMDL process and all those regulations that kick in because a water is on the impaired list. So stressed waters are definitely a focus for project implementation. The 303D are the impaired waters. So the ones with yellow circles around them are already impaired. The TMDLs are impaired, and the flow regulated ones, these altered by flow, are also officially impaired waters. So all of those are some form of impaired, and we break them out under different categories on whether they have a TMDL or they need a TMDL or they don't need a TMDL. So that's why there's more than one impaired category, but they are all officially impaired. And this is kind of the list of those. So there's more than the 42 on this list because some have multiple impairments. This one has temperature, flow, and oxygen. So there are 18 waters in this basin that are acid impaired. That is very common for this region. It's based both on our geology, which is not conducive to buffering acid that precipitates down from acid rain. And we just happen to be in the unfortunate jet stream position where a lot of the Midwest air dumps on southern Vermont. So we have most of the acid impaired waters in southern Vermont. So these are all the impairments that we do have and whether they're stressed or impaired. One of the things I've found really interesting as I've started preparing this data is we have been doing, there's a modeling program for the Connecticut River to look at our total maximum daily load, which is based on nitrogen versus phosphorus on Lake Champlain because of an impairment of dissolved oxygen in Long Island Sound. So it's called the Long Island Sound TMDL. And the nutrient modeling breaks it down into what we call catchments, these very small basin pieces. Each one of these little blocks is a catchment. And the modeling is showing, which I found really interesting, is that so from fertilizer, manure, and crops, we're looking pretty good. From urban sources, we're looking pretty good. From septic sources, we're not looking so good. And I found that startling. I did not know that about this basin. So certainly septic, municipal wastewater, septic, those issues are definitely going to be a piece of this basin plan because it's looking like that is having some pretty significant impacts on the Connecticut River water quality, which I need to get more into, and I need to do some more background to research this data. But the preliminary look at the watershed, this is what it's showing. So I'm intrigued and surprised by it. And I do want to acknowledge that we have a lot of help in our monitoring by the volunteer programs. The Southeastern Vermont Watershed Alliance in particular covers Basin 11 and does the water quality monitoring all summer long, which is wonderful. And that's a program that uses the state's La Rosa Partnership Program. So the volunteers collect water samples all summer long, and the lab runs them most of the time. This program wasn't a go this summer because of COVID budget cuts, but it has been, and it will be back again, hopefully next season. But we value that data tremendously. We don't have the capacity to be out in a basin every year. We are only there every 5 years. So these volunteer programs are really key to our knowledge of the water quality in the watershed. And we also do the geomorphic assessments, which is the physical assessments of the watershed, where somebody walks the river from top to bottom, seeing where there are problems, where there are discharges, where there's erosion, where there's bank failure. And this is the map of the reaches that have been assessed in this basin. So you can see that there's there's like no green except for one teeny little spot down here. And otherwise there's very little yellow, which is good. And then there's a lot of orange and red, which is fair and poor. We have streams that are definitely impacted geomorphically, where the channels have been manipulated for 150 years, where roads run right up against our rivers and our streams. There's a lot going on, and certainly Irene didn't make any of those conditions any better. So there is a lot of work to be done. We do the stream geomorphic assessments, which result in what we call river corridor plans. And the river corridor plans lay out specific, site-specific projects for us to try to take on and work with our partners to fund those projects. Kathy can probably talk a little bit about two that she just finished. So these projects all go into our watershed projects database, and hopefully we can work our way through that list and do restoration at these sites. We also do stormwater studies, and this whole list of towns now have stormwater maps where our stormwater folks have gone through and opened up every single storm drain and looked down and said, this pipe goes that way, and there's a storm drain uphill that's connecting here, and this one is going that way, and it's coming out in the Saxtons River over there. So this mapping is all completed for all of these towns, which results in a stormwater report that says that, again, it lays out projects that could be implemented to improve stormwater runoff and clean up stormwater discharges. The next step beyond that is to do what we call a stormwater master plan. So it is a priority to get some of the stormwater master plans completed. The only town in this region that has one is, it covers a part of Brattleboro, the Putney Road area of Brattleboro. So there are no other stormwater master plans, and those go into further detail beyond what these particular reports will tell us. They'll develop more projects and more specific projects to help with stormwater. So that will be in the plan as well. And if your town is interested in working on that, I'll point to Margot and say, Margot will help you with that. So the project, all those projects that we implement or all the projects that we learn about through these studies, projects that you will bring to the table that you would like to see in your town or your region, all end up in the Watershed Projects database. And if you Google, again, the Clean Water Project Explorer, all of the projects that we know about that have a specific GPS site will pop up as a drop. And again, most of what we do is natural resources, but the stormwater projects are the orange ones, agricultural projects, and we also have others. There are actually hazard mitigation, or there's clean water, water quality monitoring or studies, or those kind of projects as well that are in the database. So, and if you click on any one of the buttons when it's an active interactive map, it pulls up what that project is, kind of its project number 24 in a river corridor plan, what the project ID number is, and then it'll tell you more specifics about the project and how it gets screened. So if you're interested in the projects in your town, just go to the Project Explorer and you can see everything that we've got. And particularly fill in the blanks where there's a project that you know about that we should be focused on. Or maybe there's one of these that's been done by a group or the town, and we'd like to say it's completed versus it's still out there. But please bring projects forward. Margot will be, and Corey will both be keepers of the list and gathering those and funneling those projects to me. And we have made progress. As I said, this is a 5-year rotation, and we have done implementation for a number of years now. Some of these are probably 2 of my favorites that have been done over the past few years. This is Adams Brook in Dover, Newfane, Dover. And that's what it looked like after they supposedly fixed it after Irene. And this is what it looks like now after we removed all that, reestablished some floodplain, removed the blockages and opened up the channel again, which is really wonderful to see. And this is the Weston Village Dam that failed during Irene. The lower part of their park, right in the village, right above the village. And last summer we worked together with the community group and had that dam removed and the stream channel restored. You know, just really great projects and doing good for the river and the water quality and the habitat and the aquatic passage and everything else. So there's lots to do, but it's really great when you see this kind of result and kind of the natural system being restored. And you know, the 2015 plan had 68 actions, and those had, you know, A, B, C, and D's. 75% of those have been picked up and implemented to some level. Some of them are studies, some of them are outreach, and a lot of them are implementation. So all of that has been started, and some of them are no longer needed. Sometimes they take care of themselves and we get to not have to do them. We've had a couple of those, which has been great. Nature does fix itself over time. So this is where we are. We've done the monitoring, we've done the assessment, and I'm in the development stage now. So I'm coming to you to try to find out what you want me to do. And as I said, I'll write the plan. I'll take all that information and write the plan and then come back in hopefully for 3, 4, 5 months with a drafted plan for your approval and say, yes, I captured, or no, I did not capture. And then we'll go right back into the implementation of the new strategies and continue with the ones that are in the database already. So I'd love to hear from you on what you're looking for, and if it comes to later, please feel free through Margot, through Corey, through Kathy and CRC, and you know, provide that information. You feel free to provide it directly to me, and you can find, you know, the website, which has other information. It has the assessment reports, and it has the links to the project database and all those things at our website, the Water Investment Division website. So with that, I'd love to hear from you, and if you have any questions, comments, feedback, I want to hear it. And I'm just gonna, unless somebody wants to refer to a slide, shall I stop sharing? Okay. Great.
So it looks like Jack might have his hand up.
Yeah. One thing maybe I missed, but I didn't hear you talk about, was invasive plants. You mentioned maybe milfoil, but I'm concerned about along streams in the riparian area where you have invasives come in. Is that part of what you do, or is that a whole different thing other than what you're doing here? The reason I'm so concerned about this, I was over in the Battenkill like yesterday, and I was amazed at it's all invasives along there. It was so horrible. Is that a problem we have along Basin 11 here, and is that a concern?
Very much so. I think the Saxtons River is like ground zero for Japanese knotweed. It's amazing. And it has been for a long time, and certainly the West and the Williams are running close behind. We don't have a huge problem with inland lake invasives here, which is really great. We don't have a ton of like Eurasian milfoil in our lakes and things like that, which is really good. We try to keep on top of that and keep on the assessments and scouting for those. There certainly are issues in the Connecticut River itself with water chestnut, with, well, there are a whole mess of them. I won't try to list them, pondweed and milfoil and all kinds of fun things in the Connecticut River itself, particularly in places like the retreat meadows and where there are boat launches and things like that. Hard to stop things from moving around that huge system. I see the biggest concern, let me just say, my biggest concern is the knotweed. It totally takes over our riverbanks. It's horrible for bank stabilization. It is contrary to bank stabilization. So I will address that in the plan. I haven't pulled up or gathered together all the maps. And I'm not even sure if I will, because it's so extensive. But I will address it. And if there are particular areas of concern, I would love to hear from the group as to where the focus areas could and should be. So if nobody's going to ask, I'm going to answer David Dean's question about the fish stuff. I haven't incorporated it into this slideshow yet because I am...
Not mine.
What?
Not mine. David Ween.
Oh, sorry, David Ween. So I haven't incorporated the stuff into this yet because I'm working with Lael, our fisheries biologist, and they're just now getting in from the field. So I'm waiting for the fisheries biologist to draft the fisheries report. And then I will take that and incorporate it into the plan as you know I do. And I will use the comments you have provided as I draft that section. So it's not here yet, but it is coming once Lael gives me that report.
Following on that, if I might, Madam Chair. Has DEC and Fish and Wildlife figured out what B1 means? Since it means different things. The last time that we had this conversation, it meant different things to the two organizations.
So when we reclassify waters, and this is just background for those who aren't as familiar with it, we classify them by use. So those designated uses, the fishing, swimming, boating, aquatic habitat, we classify a water by use. So it's not necessarily going to be B1 or A1 for every use, but it is likely to be B1. So what we're talking about here is B1 for fisheries. So we have specific criteria for each class for each use, and it has to meet the B1 level of criteria for fish to be reclassified as a B1 for fisheries. And that is a criteria that is set by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. All other criteria are set by DEC. That's the one because it's in their purview. Fisheries is in their purview. So they have criteria set for how many trout per mile density will make it a B1 versus a B2. And I'm not sure if I have shared that with you folks at TU or not, but it has gone back and forth, but those criteria are set. And I will ask Lael if that's something they're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, that's one of our comments. So, and that brings up another question. As part of your presentation, you said that you would be bringing back the draft for comment to this group. Are not basin plans adopted by rule?
Basin plans are adopted by the secretary or signed off on by the secretary. It's not legislative.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean legislative, but the APA. I mean, it goes out the draft goes out for comment to the general public, not just to this committee.
Oh, correct. I just meant I would come back and speak to the group about it. Sorry.
Right, okay. I thought that suddenly if you weren't part of this group, you had lost some input.
No, no, not at all. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to imply that.
And lastly, I am very interested to see what you do come up with in terms of the wastewater treatment facilities, because those are like the plant in the Little Shop of Horrors in terms of feed me, in terms of sucking up available resources. And it's my memory that we got everybody to 0.8, and then EPA was requiring everybody to have a reduction plan as part of their NIPD's permit renewal. So all of a sudden they're at the top of the list.
So when it comes to the Long Island Sound TMDL, wastewater treatment plants are a very small portion of the nitrogen that goes into our waters. However, they are an easily regulated entity. So EPA very much focuses on the nitrogen discharge from our wastewater treatment plants, because they can say, you need to cut this number, done. It's a lot easier to do that in a wastewater treatment plant than on a farm.
I understand that their power is strictly to NIPD's. They have no direct discharge authority at all, but we do.
Correct.
And in terms of making choices of where we're going to spend severely limited resources, anyhow, I'm going to be real curious to see what comes up in terms of the data and the impact and why wastewater treatment might move to the top of the list. Thank you.
Yeah, we certainly have support. We have financial support for wastewater, water and wastewater. And a lot of that is federal. So, and we have the State Clean Water Revolving Fund, which has a lot of money in it. So the good part is that where we do have those plants and where we do have, particularly, I guess one of my focuses will be to look at communities that are right on the river, that have very small parcel sizes, and there's not a lot of room for individual septic systems, but there is no municipal system. And I think that's why we come up yellow and orange on that septic map, because we do have a lot of that. And so we could focus some of those millions onto working with smaller communities to find the right fit of a municipal system. And that doesn't necessarily mean a wastewater treatment plant, but a municipal system that fits the size of a village. And if that's where a significant portion of our nitrogen is coming from, that will certainly be part of the basin plan to look at those issues and try to work with communities on addressing some of that, because we do have pots of money for that.
So Marie, this is Jack again. I'd like to follow up on David's question about the different classifications of water. In the past, on some of the basin plans you have written, you've talked about outstanding resource waters. Mm-hmm. I recently had some conversations with Oliver Pearson of Lakes and Ponds, and he seems to be emphasizing more what you were doing today, A1, B1, B2, et cetera. And so you haven't mentioned that today about this particular watershed. So is that off the table now, and the focus entirely is on the A1, B1, et cetera?
No, not at all. A1, B1 and reclassification is kind of more clear cut because there are specific water quality criteria that we can test for and reach. ORW is a more qualitative evaluation, right? Quantitative versus qualitative. And ORW can be based on all sorts of things, from whether it's got a good fishery or good water quality to whether it's got cool geology or historic resources. So they're different animals and they provide different levels of protection. They both provide more protection than like just a general B2 water. But they are different and they have different criteria. So there's not, it's harder to describe ORW. It's a great option and I like it because it does have flexibility. As we've talked about, you know, for Lake Raponda, there are pieces that really fit. And while it might not meet a B1 or an A1 water on some of the criteria, it absolutely can meet the ORW criteria of wildlife habitat and stopover and recreation and all kinds of other aspects that outstanding resource water can cover. So I will be doing ORW recommendations and I'd like to hear from, again, I'd like to hear from all of you on what are those waters that have uses, have values that aren't necessarily strictly a water quality number. Where is that recreation? In Basin 11, we have very few ORWs, but there is one in Basin 11, and that's on the North Branch Ball Mountain. If you know the Jamaica swimming area, the Jamaica Falls, that's an ORW. And it's an amazing site, and it's just a short stretch of the brook where the falls and the swimming hole are, and it's absolutely stunning. So you can do that with ORW. Pick what's important. Actually, another one that I have recommended, and I keep meaning to talk to Kathy about this, and folks in Rockingham, the petroglyphs in Bellows Falls in the Connecticut River. And the fact that the Bellows Falls Canal is the first canal in the US. You know, those are historic resources that should be acknowledged and protected, and that could be put forward as ORW for the cultural and historic protection. So we have opportunities in this basin for that, and I'd love to hear what it is that you all value and would like to see that level of protection on.
Okay, that's helpful. I would like to follow up on the protection aspects of what you've been speaking about. It's been my impression that enforcement in Vermont of many things seems to be problematic. And so I don't know whether it's appropriate for your basin plan to include this, but as a member of the public, I don't really know clearly what's the best way for enforcement to take place and what role does the citizenry have in this, and, you know, some general guidelines about how to go about this, how to do this. You know, you don't want to pester people about needless small things, but if there could be some perhaps education that could be done if citizens are going to be considered, you know, part of the group to enforce whatever improvements, you know, you're hoping to institute. To me, it seems to me that this would only help you further what your goals are. Call attention to this, and if there were adequate enforcement and the word gets out, it seems to me most or many people in the public would recognize this and then take better care of the resources we have at lower costs. So I don't know whether this is a fair game here, but to me, as a citizen, I think, this would be a help to what your goals are.
That's an interesting point, Jack. We generally have not covered enforcement issues within the basin plan. That's an interesting thought, and I'll give that some thought on how that could or might fit. Just as info, the easiest way, if you see something happening or are concerned about something, the easiest way to do it is right on the front page of the Agency of Natural Resources website.
Yeah.
There's a button that says report an environmental violation. And you can do that with your name, you can do that anonymously, but when that goes in, it means that an environmental enforcement officer has to lay eyes on it. And a lot of them, are not necessarily, while they don't look good or they look like, there's something wrong, there's not actually an official legal violation going on, but it does provide often the opportunity for the enforcement officer to talk to somebody and express that this isn't the best thing. And just have that kind of a conversation. So even if it's not a legal enforcement issue, improvements can happen just from that interaction. So if you see that on the ground, you're concerned about something, you shouldn't hesitate to enter it into that complaint form, because it provides a record so that if something more serious happens next year at the same place, I'm working on one right now where, it hasn't been an official legal violation, but complaints have been coming in for 10 years. So how do we deal with that? And so when we have that record, it helps make things happen. And it may not be tomorrow, but having it recorded makes a difference. So I encourage you to do that when you see things on the ground. And I will give some thought as to how it fits in the basin plan or not. It's an interesting point.
I think that's helpful. I am aware of that. But you don't want to be calling about unnecessary items that, maybe you're a problem, but maybe not a big problem. And getting the word out about what you had just mentioned about this as a resource and who to talk to. But, it might even be extended further to announce when violations or fines have taken place. I would think that word would be important to get out to the public so that they would be made aware of this and others would not make the same sort of mistakes, so that protection and savings of taxpayer dollars, would be potentially possible.
Yeah. The big ones make the news, but most of the smaller ones don't.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Just a thought.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Are there any other questions for Marie?
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
We really appreciate you coming, Marie. We're looking forward to seeing you, as you said, in a few more months.
And I just, oh, sorry, Lise. I just wanted to also point out that Marie will be working with Corey from the Conservation District on doing a agricultural producers focused Basin 11 input session. So very similar to this, but with a real agricultural focus. And that date has not been announced yet, but it will be coming up. As well as there will be a watershed specific presentation for the West River and its tributaries. And that date also has not been set, but will be coming up. And so when those are announced, we will make sure that people know about those.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, if anyone comes up with other questions, please feel free to contact me.
David, did you have something else, David?
No, I just said thank you.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you, Marie.